Hello, everyone, and welcome to Election Watch. With more than 7 months to go until Election Day, there is plenty of opportunity for surprises and plot twists. To get a temperature check on what's happening this week, the week of Super Tuesday, Chairman Dave Camp and Todd Metcalf spoke with Ken Kuykendall at this year's International Tax Conference. Here's their conversation.
Chairman Camp, Todd, thanks for making time to chat. We're sitting here the day after Super Tuesday, and I'm intrigued to get your perspectives on sort of what we've seen and what we should be looking at. So maybe right off the bat, what are some key takeaways you guys are feeling after seeing some of the returns come in?
Well, the outcome was kind of expected. I mean, we know who our nominees are. I think it's interesting to look at what the enthusiasm was on each side, and it appeared as though Donald Trump had more enthusiastic supporters. This uncommitted issue is still a factor in some of these races. I think ultimately, and I'm not sure that's going to matter much, but it's just an interesting take that the media is talking about.
Yeah, I agree on the uncommitted thing. I think, when I think in Minnesota, they got like 20%, and uncommitted got a delegate to the convention. So obviously that's not an ideal outcome, but I do think that it sends a signal to the campaign. I think the campaign's going to be trying to adjust and respond to that. I agree with Chairman Camp. I don't think that there were any surprises, even up and down the race, even if you sort of went down ballot and sort of looked at, there were some member races that were closely contested or thought would be closely contested, but sort of turned out the way they were expected. So fully expected. Now we just ready for Trump-Biden 2.0, I guess.
I do think this independent thing is going to be something to watch right now. It's an interesting narrative I sort of see weaving through. So let's broaden the aperture up a little bit here and maybe put a business lens on this right now. You both spend a lot of time talking to business, talking to companies out there. What sort of questions are you getting from companies as they start to zero in on the election and the process happening right now?
At least what I've been hearing is what is going to happen in the future. I mean, companies are always trying to figure out what's coming next. They kind of know what the law is now, but they want to understand what's happening. And so really with regard to tax policy, what might happen under different scenarios, whether it's one-party control or whether it's divided government. They're trying to understand what policy might be, not only in the next few months, but also in the next administration.
Yeah, I think that I spend a lot of time, given my former seat, trying to assuage some fears that, well, if Biden is reelected and you have a Democratic House, that suddenly, they're going to throw the TCJA out with the bathwater and we're going to be back to the bad old days of high taxes. I don't think that's the case. I think that, as was discussed earlier, I think we're more likely to have a divided government scenario in that situation. And I think that tax policy, there are going to be changes because you've got that huge, transaction with all the expirations at the end of 2025. There are going to be changes, but I think those changes are probably going to end up being more moderate than some might be scared of at the moment. And that's sort of what I try to explain. And I also say, look, get in there and talk about what concerns you now. Don't wait until 2025. Go talk now.
Great advice. So maybe, and you hit on this a little bit, if we double click in, what are the issues that are most important to business right now when you're talking about them? Obviously, TCJA, individual provisions expiring, how do you pay for that? Like, what are the other stuff that's really important for business right now?
Well, I mean, I think right now, what this bill that's sort of hung up in the Senate, what would seem to be to everyone like an easy lift. It got a huge vote out of the House on a bipartisan basis, and yet it just sort of seems stuck. 174 expensing, broader bonus depreciation, et cetera, et cetera. Those things are important to business. Business has been making the case. There's broad support, but there's just this, it doesn't seem to be able to move at the moment. I think that's where businesses are really focused, and they're also focused on it not just in this moment, but they think if it doesn't get done, what does that mean in 2025? Yeah. Do we get expensing back at all? And I think that's an open question, both bonus depreciation and R&E expensing.
Yeah.
More than 1,000 small businesses recently sent a letter to the Senate leaders saying it's catastrophic if we don't have these expired provisions, what we call extenders, move forward, as Todd mentioned. And so they really focused on that, and it really is a Senate issue. And I think the challenges in the Senate are greater than I would have anticipated as well. This, in the normal times, would be sort of an easy bill. It was bipartisan and overwhelming in the House, as Todd mentioned, but also the policy really combined things that people in both parties wanted. I think ultimately if this bill were to get to the Senate floor, it would pass. I think there are enough Republicans that would support that. It's just hung up, particularly when the ranking member on Senate Finance isn't supportive of the bill. So there's still some things they need to work out, but it does have real-world significant consequences for many employers out there.
Yeah, and honestly, what's happening now feels like the tailgate before the Super Bowl, guys, because there's a lot of work that's going to happen, or a lot that's going to happen after this election when you think about some of those expiring provisions. But I agree with you; it's a precursor of the things that are focus areas. So, all right, so you're both very experienced and steeped in the policy area. You've been in part of prior congressional caucuses working through this stuff. So here would be my ask for you. As this plays out, what are you guys watching for? What are the signs you're watching for as to what business can expect, what individuals can expect from a tax standpoint moving forward?
Well, we have to hear from the President of the State of the Union, and also he'll release his budget a week later. So that will give us an idea. Is he going to support some of the policies he supported in the past, or are there some changes there?
Yeah.
I think also, what are the key issues in this election? I think, unfortunately, this election may be more about personalities, but it does appear as if the economy and immigration or border, those are kind of vying for 1 and 2 as kind of the key issues people are thinking about. Sometimes the issue now isn't the issue that ultimately moves voters at the very end. So we're still a ways out from really kind of trying to figure out what are the key issues going to be in this particular campaign, although some of these have been going for quite a few months. So, I mean, that will mean, kind of who's going to win the House, who's going to win the Senate, and then that will have a huge impact on the kind of tax policy we might see. And I think it's important to know, is it going to be a reconciliation process, or is it going to be a negotiated bill? And that's not going to be known for some time.
Yeah, I agree with you. And exit polls, by the way, yesterday, just my own read going through here, it went through immigration, the economy. Those are the two things people are focused on, but who they trust is totally up in the air on those issues.
Completely. I mean, I think I agree with everything Chairman Camp said. I think that one of the things that concerns me a little bit is that I think this election is going to be a lot about fear. I think both sides are going to, use fear as a tactic in a way that maybe we haven't seen in a very long time. And I think that necessarily and probably reasonably makes both businesses and individual voters a little nervous. Like, is this, is it really as ugly as it seems? I am hopeful that it's not. I think it isn't as ugly as people are going to characterize it. But I think it's going to be a very tough election, a tough next several months. And I just hope that there's a dawn on the other side, if you will.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to go through this as we sit the day after Super Tuesday, sharing your views, and I'm sure there's lots more to come.
Thanks for having me.
You.